Everybody. So yeah, we'll have Jordan coming in from Stakewise, and we'll probably kick things off with that. So we'll kind of wait till he arrives before we kind of do anything meaningful. But glad to have you guys all here. Cool. So it looks like we are at 3 p.m. on the dot, or Eastern on the dot, and looks like Jordan is here from Stakewise. Hey Jordan, how you doing?
Hey Matt, I'm all good, mate. How are you doing?
Very good. Safe travels back from Austin.
Yeah, safe travels. I flew in earlier, so I'm a little bit if I go off the rails, please help me out. It's been a lot of traveling recently, but all good, all good.
Okay, well we'll have extra hard questions since you're a little tired then.
That's fantastic.
No, but hey, everybody, we'll go ahead and get rolling in maybe just one more minute. But I posted the agenda for today's meeting in the voice chat, so feel free to check that out and kind of follow along. We'll be switching it up structurally wise a little bit different this week since we have a guest speaker. But other than that, we should be able to kind of flow with the same kind of approach we normally do. But maybe just one more minute. Well, let's go ahead and get rolling. Looks like we have a good crew here today, which is nice to see. So yeah, again, the agenda for today's meeting is in the voice chat. We're going to be switching it up a little bit different this week because we have a special speaker, Jordan, with Stakewise. Hey, Jordan, you want to do a quick intro on yourself?
Sure thing. Yeah, thanks Matt again for the invite to come and chat to you guys. It was great fun last time. And it's a very interesting topic today that we've got in store. And myself, I'm been at Stakewise for over 6 months now. We're obviously a liquid staking protocol similar to Lido, so it's a very interesting topic to discuss. And also specifically, I do business development at Stakewise.
Great. Great. Well, I think we could probably talk a long time about this conversation. We could really kind of get into the intricacies of it and the implications of every little nook and cranny. But maybe we'll kind of keep this high level, just kind of keep it to the TLDR, and just really understand how we can better position ourselves as investors, as a community, as a DAO, for what may be to come. So maybe we'll just kind of start in by maybe doing a quick intro to what a stake ETH asset is, and the minting process, and really what is STETH.
Yeah, sure thing. So essentially, staked tokens represent deposits into a staking pool. So for every one ETH that is deposited into a staking pool, there'll be one staked ETH token minted in exchange. The ETH is then bundled together into batches of 32 and then submitted to validators to start earning rewards. But each staking pool has like slight nuances in how they do their tokenomics. So for example, some platforms, their staked ETH token increases in price as with respect to ETH as the validators earn rewards. So that's how like Rocketboard do it, like repricing token. At Stakewise, we do it slightly differently, where we give users rewards in a separate token. But another way to do it is to reward users with more of the same staked token. So the token remains one-to-one with the ETH, theoretically, but you get an increasing balance of that token, and that's how Lido does it. And it's effectively it's what you call a rebalancing token. And so every day, the balance of your STETH in your wallet will go up. But the key thing to remember is that the amount of staked ETH tokens in existence for each liquidity pool is essentially 100% collateralized. It's backed one-to-one with ETH held in validators. That's ETH that is both staked and earning yields, but also the rewards that are accrued in the validators. And it's that 100% collateralization ratio, which is the key point, which I'm sure will come up a lot more in this discussion. But yeah, that's kind of like a high level overview of staked ETH tokens.
Okay, great. And I actually think Breeze let me know that we actually have somebody from Lido here, Justin David Reyes. Hey, Justin, how you doing?
Hey, everybody.
Appreciate you coming out, and we weren't sure. We'd love to have you kind of put your 2 cents on it as well, but I don't know if when you popped in, but Jordan was Stakewise, and we have a good relationship with him, so thought we could bring him in. But if you have any takes or any corrections or just anything you want to kind of throw out there, feel free to make it your own.
That was a pretty solid introduction to the staked ETH asset as well. It does work exactly as he described.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of misunderstanding on what this peg, if you want to call it that, is, and we'll definitely explore that more. And so maybe I'll just pose this question to either of you, and you guys can kind of take it away. But when we say STETH peg, what do we really mean?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think a lot of the confusion comes from the fact that STETH never really intended to be pegged in price 1-to-1. It's backed 1-to-1 with ETH staked on the Beacon chain. I think that the use of the term peg came from the choice of using Curve as the kind of dot location for liquidity of staked ETH. It's held in since the staked ETH pair is technically a stable pool pair on Curve. I think the idea that it should kind of pegged 1-to-1 price rose when really they're just correlated, right? They would be correlated, not actually 1-to-1 peg. And I think maybe this continued to get a bit more confusing when we introduced the wrap staked ETH product, which is the non-rebasing version of staked ETH. That token is designed to drift in price as rewards accrue to it, rather than for the holder to get the rebasing of additional receiving additional STETH tokens representing the yield, and that is designed to be even less correlated. So I think in some way we over time got a bit lazy as an industry and started talking about ETH as the pegged price token, wrap staked ETH as the related price token, when both really are simply correlated.
Yeah, I appreciate that elaboration. I think a lot of the hype or FUD, whatever you want to call it, around this situation really comes down to the fact that we kind of just experienced this whole UST debacle, and how there was a peg loss there. Could maybe one of you kind of highlight how this situation is very different from that situation?
Yeah, I don't mind jumping in here. I mean, I touched upon it when I kind of emphasized that staked ETH tokens are 100% collateralized, and that is the key thing, and it's the key difference between the Luna situation and if you want to call it the Lido situation or any staked ETH token depegging event. Like in UST, you had something which was under collateralized, and when you run out of that collateral to try and buy the asset back, but what happens then? Well, we all kind of know what happens, right? Whereas in the case of Lido staked ETH, in the case of our staked ETH, these assets are backed 1-to-1 with ETH held in validators. So the one nuance that we need to bear in mind right now is that validator withdrawals are not enabled, and that is why these liquidity pools are so important, because they are the only way that people can actually unstake. But having said that, when validator withdrawals do become enabled, and it's worth highlighting that this is probably, I don't know, Justin, maybe you want to give your estimate, but we're kind of guessing it's about a year from now. And it's essentially the first major upgrade after the merge. I think a lot of people think it happens at the merge. That is not the case. So we're probably about a year away from validator withdrawals, and so we've basically got a year of having to rely quite heavily on these liquidity pools to provide unstaking. The one thing to mention is that when these validator withdrawals are enabled, it would definitely take the pressure off these liquidity pools, They won't need to be as deep. People will be happy to maybe wait a couple of weeks in a validator exit queue to ensure they can exit one-to-one, because remember, they are backed one-to-one with ETH, rather than having to liquidate instantly at a discount on secondary markets.
Yeah, once again, that's exactly right. We think withdrawals could be enabled anytime between 6 and 12 months after the merge. We don't really have any guidance on that. And frankly, we also don't know exactly what terms of withdrawals could be a relatively short period, like some layer ones, or it could be a month to withdrawal period to remove from the beacon chain. It could be done in tranches, with people looking to withdraw their ETH from their nodes to compete in gas wars in order to get into early tranches of withdrawals. So it is all a bit of an open question. I think there is certainly some truth to the thought that the depegging of UST and the related to that has informed the discussion around STE. That makes a lot of sense, since the marketplace and all of us were rapidly kind of inundated with messaging on Twitter and meme posts and all that about using terms like depegging and all this that might have been new to some people. And so that's the frame of reference that they see. But it is probably more true. Well, I mean, fundamentally, the appeal of staking derivatives is that you get access to the underlying the yield of participating and securing the network on Ethereum or other layer one chains, while also being able to access yield generating activities or leverage strategies using the token as collateral, the receipt token as collateral. And it makes sense that in a risk-on environment, in a bull market, that staking derivative token will trade at a small premium because it represents all of the future yield that you're getting from staking on the network. Plus the optionality to exit at whatever time through the liquidity pool. In a risk-off market or a bear market, it makes sense that it would trade at a slightly lower rate than the base asset that it is a derivative of, because you're now factoring in, the additional risk of using a derivative token in a kind of less advantageous market environment. And in that way, the asset really isn't. It's meant to be correlated, like I said before. Whereas UST was promised to be one-to-one equivalent to a US dollar, STETH isn't promised to be one-to-one equivalent to a canonical ETH token unless you want to withdraw, the beacon chain once those are enabled, at which time it will be, that one ETH. But the variance in price is basically the cost of being able to use it as a derivative in DeFi or yield generation strategies.
Got it.
I just wanted to jump in. I mentioned one other thing about the UST, and it's related to the FUD that we've seen on staked ETH, and I think it's a massive shame that there's been I don't want to say a misunderstanding, because maybe a misunderstanding is probably a good way to put it. But the FUD that you're seeing on staked ETH, especially when STETH originally started dropping, it's just a shame that unless in a market like this, people need to de-risk. And if you're holding ETH in the form of staked ETH, then sure, you need to sell your tokens to de-risk and buy stables or whatever you want to do. And there is a natural cost to doing so when everybody else is trying to do so, and trying to do so, and that's where these secondary market prices come from. And in the case right now, you will probably be sacrificing the majority of your staking yield to unstake. But that's just, if you have to do it, you've got to do it. But if people have exited a staking position because when they fully intended to remain staked for, indefinitely, or just for the simple concerns that Lido's stake teeth would drop to zero, then that is just simply wrong, and it's just basically a massive shame that I think people have been kind of caught up in that. And maybe that's on us, ourselves at Stakewise at Lido to help educate users better. Lido has been putting out tweets, and rightly so, trying to educate users that there is nothing fundamentally wrong with the protocol. All these assets are backed, so please do not panic sell if you do not intend to, de-risk for any other reason. Then you actually need to de-risk your portfolio and sell ETH. But that's the only other thing I wanted to add on top of that.
Yeah, go ahead. Do you have something you want to say, Justin?
No, I fully agree with that. I think another place that we point to as a failure in education, or I mean, it could be anywhere from sort of being to being malicious, is there are a lot of DeFi yield generation based products that referred to the yield that offered yield to users on their naked ETH by going through these liquid staking derivatives without explaining where the yield comes from. Celsius is a good example of that, but they're certainly not alone. Yes, just the same way that a lot of DeFi products offer yield on US dollars or US dollar backed stable coins to their users, and then went through Anchor and UST and all in order to generate the yield without explaining where the yield source was. And that caused a lot of difficulty, right? When a product like Celsius says we're going to pay you 7% on your ETH without explaining that ETH is being locked in the beacon in order to generate that yield, and that's maybe tenuous. And as a DeFi product, we control over that, right? Engaging with yield generating strategy on using staked assets through Lido is permissionless, right? We can't tell you no. And all of this works really well, again, in a bull market until things turn the other way.
Yeah, it's definitely a game of market forces playing out, and unfortunately in a negative way. And I guess since you brought it up around Celsius, maybe could you explain a little bit about how Celsius even comes to play here? Again, I know we're kind of to combat a little bit of FUD and misunderstanding, but I definitely think that Celsius, could have a little bit to do with this situation and maybe some fear in the market. So maybe could one of you guys explain what's happening with that?
Yeah, I mean, at its simple, Celsius is one of their products was offering relatively high yield on customers' assets, right? They'll do kind of the DeFi generating strategy, and you just experience yield, and they generated it from a variety of different sources. One of which being strategies that utilize STE. The appeal of liquid staking, right? Again, you get to experience the fundamental yield on your assets, proof of stake network, while being able to use it in yield strategy. So in that sense, they're doing exactly what is intended with an STE product. The issue specifically with STE is that since withdrawals are not enabled and not likely to be enabled for quite a long time, the only way to exit your STE position is to trade through the deep liquidity. And that was really the kind of killer app of Lido, was being able to generate such deep liquidity. So that people with very, very large positions of STE could move out in the case that the market did in the opposite direction. I think it probably bears mentioning that Stakewise has done a really fabulous job of liquidity, provision EV3 to offer deep liquidity on a much smaller kind of TVL within that. But that's a really big appeal of using the stake-wise assets as well. Happens when people want to withdraw their ETH from Celsius very, very rapidly when the market downturn. Well, Celsius now has to trade its ST-ETH into ETH through the curve pool or another liquidity pool, and that creates shock. Naturally, lead to price going down. If they don't do that, then they have to pause withdrawals, which they eventually went doing. Essentially, Celsius was playing in that the bear market or the bull market would give long enough to get through the merge and thralls before the majority users were looking to pull their ETH out. And when that didn't turn out to be a case, it became a forced seller of ETH rather than a voluntary seller of ETH, and that's what caused the most recent sort of market panic around ST.
Does sorry, this is a difficult question. Does Celsius have much ST-ETH? Are they still holding a lot of ST-ETH? Is one of the reasons why they've had to limit the withdrawals is because they actually cannot liquidate their ST-ETH. I've got a point I want to make about Celsius that is not related to Lido, but or ST-ETH in general. But interested to hear your point on that.
Their ST-ETH position is only position that's for them to move out of. I think they have pretty large liability in their wrapped BC position as well, which I think mostly held in Maker. I am not certain exactly how much ST they still have, but I think it's likely still a significant sum. It's been the rumor in marketplace is that they sold their ST-ETH holdings to TX in an OTC deal over the last couple of days, and then used that to top up the collateral on their Maker positions to lower their kind of liquidation level on the wrapped BTC assets. They sort of see playing the game that they can trade their way out of being under collateralized. And that could work. They also wind up taking a deal from another kind of lending product or organ that would sort of purchase their assets from them or the company wholesale. At this point, they are probably not the largest holder of ST-ETH. I don't think they ever were, but they're probably. I think the risk to ST-ETH market that Celsius poses is much lower now than it was a couple of days ago, and all it is based on, the internet rumor mill, not based on direct conversations with them that I've had.
Sure.
Just to chime in here, Celsius has a little over 400,000 ST-ETH on Aave that they've borrowed against. But like you said, and that's as much as I know about, I can see on chain. I've done some work with Celsius, so I know a lot of those guys pretty well. But I think that, like you pointed out, actually 3AC has been selling more ST-ETH recently, and I don't think people are really paying attention to that. I don't know what 3AC's liabilities are, but
yeah,
kind of bigger.
Yeah, and that's the top conversation. Is
One question, guys. Hindsight question, but do you believe that? I think there's a good case to be made, and it's kind of obvious now that there always should have been more of a discount for ST-ETH given the liquidity risk, and we still don't know exactly when the merge and subsequent hard fork is going to happen. Do you think that the way the curve pool was set up, with a higher A factor, it actually should have been lower to kind of allow the pool to depeg sooner and kind of price it in perhaps more easily rather than only once it gets like more lopsided. If that makes sense. What do you think about that?
So I'm not really an expert in setting up dynamics. Shouldn't really be the best person for me to answer that. As to whether the price should always have traded at a discount, that's really difficult to say. I mean, in the bull market, the value proposition of holding STETH is extremely high, right? And I think one of the biggest difficulties of being within crypto and within the DeFi ecosystems in specific, that modeling risk is very, very difficult. The truth is, once you're in crypto, you're already off the risk curve if you're kind of talking about traditional risk analysis, right? The moment you start taking leverage positions, in Anchor or Maker, you're already way over, the what is probably a reasonable level of risk relative to the upside you can expect to get out of that, unless you're in just a massive bull market where everybody's making money quickly. The risk hasn't really been modeled. So I don't believe that it should have always traded discount to ETH, so long as, as long as you're in a bull market and there are really fabulous yield generating opportunities built on top of STETH, then it makes a great deal of sense to it.
Just to jump in,
yeah.
Oh, sorry, go on. Sorry, no, Justin, you go. You finish.
I don't have a really good solution to that.
Yeah, the only thing I was just going to say is, I think obviously hindsight's great, but looking forward, the question is, so where do we go from here? And I think it makes a lot of sense that staked ETH tokens, when they have utility such as lending and borrowing and using it as collateral, should have a risk fact. Like so what are the risks in a staked ETH token? Well, there's a premium because of the lockup period, and you can't actually withdraw the collateral. But then there's also added risks of liquidations when you start getting them integrated onto different platforms like Aave and Maker. It's something that we haven't experienced on the StakePoint side because we're not there yet. But I think it certainly makes sense that these stake tokens start trading at once you start getting the ability to use it as collateral, that it's almost fair that there is some discount. What that is not clear, and I guess the market will decide. But yeah, I think it is fair to trade at a slight discount, and you'd expect to see that discount disappear, or not disappear, but like reduce once validator withdrawals are enabled. And that's why it's quite a key moment in time when that happens, because that's when obviously you can actually start redeeming and burning these state tokens for the underlying ETH.
Yeah, and I think you see that when you look at other Lido staked assets. Like we have ST Sol, ST. The assets don't suffer from the same conversation around depegging because withdrawals are enabled for those. Really is very clear once two is fully deployed successful. This becomes no longer a risk for any of STEs. But of course, it's also fair to point out that one of the reasons Lido got so large so quickly is because of the lack of, and there's a demand for a liquid staking product that can move into and out of relatively easily without slippage, and Lido was able to provide that for quite a time. Up market turned around.
Thank you guys for that. I know we're kind of running out of time on this topic, so I know we have other things on the agenda, but I wanted to give the floor to anybody else. Did anybody else have any questions before I kind of ask my final ones? No? Okay, cool. Well, maybe I'll ask, like, what happens next? What does this mean for investors? Let's say you guys pull out your crystal balls. The first message pops up and says, this is not financial advice, and don't follow everything I say. But what is the second thing you see? Like, what do you guys see playing out next with this situation?
I don't mind going first there. So I kind of hinted at it before. Like I think we expect to see discounts in stake ETH. I don't see a situation where Lido stake ETH gets back to where it was anytime soon. Sorry, Justin. Please correct me if you think otherwise. Where that discount will be, we'll let the market decide. But as for people who are looking to stake, like obviously as you guys are, I would say continue on your current strategy. And I think one of the things I always advise people is to diversify staking. Number of reasons. One, you diversify the risk on the actual underlying protocol. But also, if you split your staking across different liquidity providers, you have different liquidity pools to rely on when events such as this occur. So I think you guys have got it spot on looking to spread your risk. But yeah, I think, sorry, Justin, feel free to jump in on the question on the discount though. I think that's an interesting topic.
Well, in the short and midterm, the discount will be determined by markets, right? There's nothing that anyone can really do about that. The market is going through a general repricing of assets. We'll wind up seeing where it goes. In the long term, derivative is proven to be and event of ETH. So all the time, always be redeemed for that ETH on the beacon chain whenever the withdrawals are enabled, and at that time we'll see the market price variance close. Until then, the major job for Lido is to continue to support the ST ETH asset and all of our other ST assets by continuing to integrate with new and novel DeFi projects and platforms, offering more utility, continuing to ensure that there is liquidity through various sources so that the asset can be as performant and as possible during the bear market, however long it lasts.
Really appreciate that, guys. And, I think that's all the time we have, for at least for my questions. But, wanted to kind of open the floor one last time to just anybody else, see if they have any questions or if you guys have any final thoughts. No more questions? Well, Jordan, Justin, any last thoughts on your end?
Not really. I appreciate you reaching out and inviting us to participate. We're always really happy to hop in and join communities like this, especially ones where we are able to talk about what's really currently going on now in the market and hopefully share whatever small amount of information that we have useful.
Yeah, I completely echo that. Thanks again, Matt, and the community here. And and thanks, Justin, for joining. It was cool to be able to riff off somebody from in a similar position, but on the other side. And it's super value add, especially when people like a community. It's very easy for and people to say things that are incorrect, or especially when you're talking about other staking protocols. We all have our nuances. We try and be fair with how we talk about other people, but it's always good to have somebody on the other side just to correct you if you're wrong. And also, it just adds, it makes the conversation more true when you have a fair representation of people on that are talking on the panel. So, thanks again.
Yeah, I think that's really important. All of the liquid staking derivative protocols, especially within the Ethereum ecosystem, are dedicated to Ethereum, to ensuring the network security, ensuring participants in our community have access to really cool, interesting new products and new services, new ways of being good actors with community. And while we have competing products with different nuances in how we built them, and this is true of Rocket Pool as well, right? I think we all recognize we all have the same goal in mind.
%100%. Nothing more to add on that.
Well, Well, great. I really appreciate it again, Justin, Jordan. You guys have been amazing. I know I'm leaving this conversation much more informed. I feel better about our planned prospective investments into both you guys as well as Rocket Pool. And I'm just really happy that we have people like you guys who really genuinely care about the health network and are building protocols that are really developing something great for the future of the ecosystem. So thanks again, guys, for stopping by. For you guys and for everybody else, we will be kind of moving on to our next couple sections, which is the recent events and news, as well as some of the other initiatives we have. If you guys came for just kind of this talk, feel free to kind of mosey on out. But if you're interested in kind of sticking around, which I hope you do, we'd love to kind of start this process of going through the rest of the agenda, which is in the voice chat. But again, Jordan, Justin, thank you guys.
Thanks.
Well, cool. So I'll go ahead and dive on in then, and feel free for anybody to interrupt me if I'm missing anything or if they have anything they want to discuss in this first events and news section. So something that I kind of played around with last time, and I'm still kind of playing around with my head, is just like issuing POAPs for these type of events. I want to do some kind of creative things to empower and reward the different people that have not only attended but contributed to all the different things that we have going on. Our asset, which is our treasury, is one that's very large, and it definitely deserves a lot of attention. So I want to over time reward the people that are contributing meaningfully to that. So if anybody has any ideas, thoughts on how to issue a POAPs and benefits and things we can kind of do around that, please let me know, and we can kind of go from there. I guess next on the ETH deployment proposal, a couple edits. Just to let you know, we are changing the time frame, or I think it has been changed, and Jason, correct me if I'm wrong. But we'll be changing the execution time frame to 120 days. Another update on the SWI's additional incentives. I posted that in the forum, but just clarification there, so feel free to go check that out as well, and I'll try to drop the link to that in shortly. And then again, we added some additional language just to add a little bit more flexibility in how we allocate, just in case SDETH, the PEG, if you want to call it that, the ratio got extremely low. We would just want to monitor that and have flexibility with how we kind of deploy our assets there. So please, again, read that proposal, make your thoughts known. This is about 75% of our idle ETH that will be deployed, so very meaningful, and would love to have any thoughts, comments on that to make sure we're going down the right path for the community. Or if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a DM directly as well. Another thing,
the Tokamak guys have been great to chat with, and I'm happy to have him give his time to come talk with our community. So really excited about that.
Oh yes, very exciting, and again, definitely check out those AMA questions and add some if you have any really interesting thoughts there. The next thing is we have another proposal post. Oop, that's not the right one. It's in the agenda. It's the Ribbon Vault proposal. That one's recently posted. I think that there's probably a little bit of information missing, so I won't go too meaningfully in that, but feel free to check it out and make your thoughts known there. Additionally, which I just posted the link for, is a poll around our staking boost proposal that's still outstanding. Again, this is anonymous, so please go in and make your thoughts known. This will just be good information. Again, nothing binding. Just gives us a little bit more information on how the community feels from a soft consensus perspective around just boosting staking yields and staking yields in general as it relates to their position in Rook. So we'd love if everybody gave a little bit more information to make us have a little bit more data to work with. But I think outside, we talked a lot about the SDE. That's obviously a big news updates. We hit on the Celsius FUD, we hit on the 3AC FUD, as well as many other things. But does anybody else have anything from an events or news perspective they'd like to share here? Okay, great. Well, I guess the action items to take away are go make your thoughts known on the ETH deployment proposal, the Ribbon Vault proposal, add in questions to the Tokamak AMA, and then just fill out the form the poll that I posted in the chat, if you could, and hopefully that'll give us a lot of data to work with on different fronts.
Matt,
but I guess
let me just quickly say, that link for Slido in voice chat, you don't need to log in or anything. It's just 4 quick, like, yes or no questions. I think there's one multiple choice question that has a third option at the end. Everyone that throws an answer there, you're helping us, gather as much data as possible. So I really hope everybody kind of takes like 40 seconds and hops in and votes on Slido.
Great, thanks, Kyle. So I think that was everything for the events and news section. I'll kind of move on into the open floor before we get into the initiative section. But if anybody if they're new here, they want to do an intro on themselves, anything that they want to state as a future initiative, or just thoughts that they'd like to get out there about any current proposals or anything going on in the market, here's your kind of chance to speak up about that. Okay, cool. Well, then again, just a friendly reminder for this section, if you have any dashboard requests or improvements, feel free to use that link in our master stubs. We'll get that addressed, as you can. But other than that, we'll go ahead and move on into the initiative collaboration and discussion section of this. So right now, I would say we have 2 big initiatives from a proposal perspective that we're currently working through, and which I can post here in a second. But really the first one, now that we've kind of had a proposal posted on the ETH deployment standpoint, now we're just looking more for the stablecoin. Let's see. And so here's kind of just the current template that we're working off of. And then I will pull the matrix here. This is still very preliminary. I think past couple Treasury Tuesdays have been action-packed, so we haven't been able to kind of workshop as much as we'd want. But really, that's kind of the form we're in currently. So maybe we'll kind of start with just looking at the matrix. Similar to what we did with the ETH deployment process, really what we did was kind of crowdsource ideas from where we can kind of get meaningful, yield off of our assets. And then from there, we then kind of look at the different attributes that we think we want to kind of measure each of them against and kind of do the research and kind of divide and conquer from there. So I think what you'll see here is a lot of low-hanging fruit. That are just kind of some of the bigger names, but I think there's probably a lot of opportunities that we can kind of go to from smaller protocols that are still battle hardened and still like somebody we could trust, but we could probably get additional incentives because if we are able to come in at scale and that's a more meaningful percent of their TVL, that could be kind of a win-win scenario for everybody. So that's something to keep in mind. So we'll probably continue to do an async on this front, but wanted to kind of pause there and see if anybody else has any ideas or protocols that they'd like us to investigate from where we can park our yield, our stablecoins to kind of get some good yield, or build a future relationship where we can kind of secure additional order flow.
And Matt, obviously, to be clear here, this is permissionless options only, correct? Like so nothing like say. On a centralized exchange or anything like that.
Yeah, that's a really great clarification. I think permissionless is kind of a broad term. Maybe centralized versus decentralized to some degree, and even that's probably questionable. But maybe let's use Maple as an example. Like I would say they're relatively permissioned. Like they actually have true humans that are doing underwriting of the people that are wanting to kind of borrow against those pools. So I would say that's permissioned and not permissionless. So that's one clarification. But we currently have about $3.5 million of USDC deposited there. So that's one caveat. But maybe kind of focusing on what you were saying is centralized entities like Celsius or Nexus or some of these other ones, we probably cannot move forward with, mostly because they require KYC, and us being a DAO, we wouldn't want to do that. That kind of creates I would say a governance vector that we don't want to have to worry about, a centralization vector. And again, there's just added risk by if we had one party that was doing the KYC and kind of controlled a lot of the funds. It's probably not the best bet. So yeah, we are mainly focusing on decentralized, permissionless, mostly permissionless applications like the ones you see here. Another clarification point I think is the focal point we should probably have is single-sided yield off our deposits. I think especially in a volatile market like this, we wouldn't want to put it into like a pool where impermanent loss is a real possibility. And again, the way I see it is our stable coins are really like our saving grace, something that we want to feel are super secure and are not going to kind of lose that value. So if we were to put it in with something that's paired and is actually a directional asset, it kind of takes away from the asset type that we're really kind of striving for by holding that. So just another clarification point with regards to options.
Hey Matt, this is Alex from Hedgie. Just one more quick clarification to help me think about stuff in general. Have you put together sort of like a investment mandate or anything that kind of outlines guidelines for what you're looking to do with the stable coins in terms of like risk tolerances and exposures and that type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I have something that's informally prepared, but it hasn't gone through like a governance to be like ratified as like the Bible that everybody has to adhere to. So there's nothing formal in place, but I think informally, when we're measuring these different attributes, we are kind of putting them into different risk buckets as well in relation to their rewards as well. So if you look at that matrix, those are kind of the main attributes. So we're doing that. It's just maybe not bucketed them explicitly on on the actual proposal itself.
Okay. It's just always good to like kind of have at the back of the mind thinking and looking at different protocols and strategies, how that fits into the broader portfolio within, those risk parameters.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everything we need to be doing needs to be really systematic, needs to be viewed in relation to the aggregate, and so we definitely do that. Like a lot of our proposals state like what percentage of our treasury and what percentage of our stablecoins, and looking at the diversity of where we're deploying our assets. So we do that, I guess you could say, relatively informally as of now, but hopefully formalizing that more and more over time. And hey, again, welcome, Alex.
Thanks. Yeah.
But I guess looking at this, right now we have kind of, I guess you could say, the 5 core Treasury crew that we have been working with that mainly worked on the ETH deployment, and I know that they've been working on putting this together. But does anybody else have any thoughts, ideas about additions to this matrix, or maybe even they want to raise their hand and kind of volunteer to kind of be a part of this process?
Yeah,
Great.
yeah. I mean, I'm happy to join in a bit on the process as well. I need to kind of get my bearings straight and deep dive in a bit more, but happy to help out.
Okay, cool. Yeah, well, I'll go ahead and add you then, and the rest of the treasure crew, we'll just plan on finding. I feel like I'm saying this every week now, but we'll find some time to have a working session around the stablecoin deployment, and we can kind of get a little bit more meaningfully in the details there.
Awesome.
I guess maybe kind of switching gears here to the next thing that's kind of initiative is our Optimism Phase 1 proposal. Starfire, you want to give an update there?
Sure. We have the Optimism proposal or a draft kind of at a good point. I know we're having Hazard take a quick look at it, but the voting cycle for the Phase 1 Optimism funding round starts June 23rd, and that runs to July 6th. So they haven't explicitly stated that there's a hard deadline to get the proposals on their form, but I'm assuming it's before that June 23rd.
One funding period is, or not period, but program is.
Yeah. So Optimism is doing another airdrop of their OP tokens. They're calling it a STEM pack. It's an airdrop of about 230 million tokens, and it's aimed at providing funding for builders and projects in the Optimism community. And the idea is kind of creating this feedback loop of rewarding builders and protocols that drive activity on Optimism. And I figured that given the nature of our technology, the coordination layer, we can fit pretty nicely with some of these applications on Optimism, especially as volume and activity ramps up over there. And the way that they've described it, it seems like this will be reoccurring airdrops as long as your project and protocol is driving meaningful activity and making an impact in their ecosystem. So it seems like it'd be a good way for us to kind of get our feet in the water over in the layer 2 scene and make some new connections.
This was Starfire's idea, and I think it's something that's really fascinating. I think the Optimism, despite the hiccup that they've recently experienced, is going to be a thriving ecosystem. This could be a great way for us to position ourselves and kind of get funding to do so, and probably on top of all this really be a great way to market ourselves as an organization, somebody who's really trying to do something egalitarian in the space and something that really could meaningfully impact the L2 landscape. So. Really excited to see how this shakes out. If you have any insider knowledge about, how Optimism governance works, or just about this program in general, and you have some passion for kind of helping out, please let us know because we'll continue doing that. But otherwise, we'll continue down the current path. I know personally one of the Optimism delegates, and he's already agreed to kind of put his take on it, review it, so that we can optimize our chances of success. So yeah, this is in full swing, and kind of excited to see where this goes. But does anybody else have anything on the Optimism front that they'd like to talk about? Okay, great. Well, we probably could have had some more in-depth discussions on the stablecoin. We'll save that for another working session, and more updates on that front next week. But otherwise, does anybody else have any final comments or things that they'd like to say? Okay, great. I guess a couple of housekeeping things. Governance workshops at 3 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. Town Hall, 3 p.m. Eastern on Friday, I believe. Kyle, and then Tokmak AMA at 3 p.m. Eastern on Thursday, right, Kyle?
Correct. So yeah, just 2 reminders off your reminders. Yeah, the running questions channel or thread in general for adding your Tokamak AMA questions, and then getting back in Slido. We love for everyone's input there. I just relinked to it in voice chat. So yeah, if you want to submit your answers to the polls, that'd be fantastic.
Awesome. Well, again, really appreciate everybody who came out today. I think it's been a really good meeting. We learned a lot about the SDE situation as well as some other ancillary implications of that. And, we'll continue working through the stablecoin deployment as well as the Optimism Phase 1. But as always, if you'd like to get involved, please raise your hand. And we definitely would love to make space and kind of hear your voice on this. Because, again, the more the merrier in this situation. But I guess as anybody else has any last second thoughts or comments, we'll go ahead and wrap up. Thanks, guys.
Really interesting. This is Danilo from Rocket Pool, and I'm not from the team, but from the community. But I try to tune in on these, and hearing the other teams speak it's just great. You guys provide service not just to your own community, but for other communities. Come and listen. I think a couple people from our community also came and listened to Guard, your legal experts. So I'm hoping to keep showing up and keep listening.
Welcome again, sir. And yeah, we will definitely want to be a resource, and especially these trying times. I think we're well capitalized, and we want to make sure that we can kind of contribute to the space in a meaningful way, and kind of use this as a marketing as well. So yeah, happy to have any community members anytime come in, and again, glad to have you here. Great. Well, again, appreciate it, everybody, and go enjoy your day and go touch some grass. Take it easy.
Cheers. Bye.